The inheritance of Rome. How Europe's centers of power moved across history. The history of Europe after the fall of Rome can be understood as a long succession of political, commercial, and financial centers. Power did not simply disappear when the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Instead, the institutions, wealth, trade routes, currencies, technologies, and political traditions of the Roman world were repeatedly inherited, transformed, and redirected by the civilizations that followed. In this sense, the fall of Rome was not the end of the Roman world. It was the beginning of a long process in which different societies competed to inherit its functions. By the 4th century, the center of gravity of the Roman Empire had already begun moving eastward. Constantinople, founded by Constantine in 330 AD, occupied an extraordinary strategic position between Europe and Asia. When the Western Roman Empire formally collapsed in 476, the Eastern Roman Empire continued for nearly another 1,000 years. The people of what modern historians call the Byzantine Empire continued to consider themselves Romans. Roman law, administration, Christianity, imperial government, and monetary traditions survived. Constantinople became a bridge between the Mediterranean, the Balkans, the Black Sea, and the civilizations of the Middle East and Asia. The Roman inheritance had not disappeared. It had moved east. But Constantinople would eventually face another transformation of the Mediterranean world, the rise of Islam. Beginning in the 7th century, the Islamic Caliphates rapidly expanded across the Middle East, North Africa, and much of the Iberian Peninsula. Cities such as Damascus and later Baghdad became major centers of commerce, scholarship, science, and administration. Meanwhile, Muslim-controlled Córdoba developed into one of the great intellectual and economic centers of medieval Europe. The old Roman Mediterranean was being reorganized. Yet power remained divided. Constantinople continued to dominate important eastern trade routes, while Muslim powers controlled enormous portions of the southern Mediterranean. In the West, European kingdoms gradually began rebuilding political and economic institutions of their own. Eventually, another transformation emerged from the Italian city-states. Venice became a commercial powerhouse by positioning itself between Europe and the markets of the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic world. Genoa competed with it. Florence developed sophisticated banking and financial institutions. Trade, credit, accounting, and commercial networks increasingly became sources of power alongside armies and territory. The center of gravity was beginning to move from the possession of land toward the control of commerce and finance. Then came the great Iberian empires. Portugal and Spain connected Europe to the Atlantic world on an unprecedented scale. The discovery of the Americas brought enormous quantities of silver and gold into European markets, while Spanish territories stretched across Europe, the Americas, and eventually the Pacific. The Habsburgs attempted to construct something resembling a multinational European superstate. But enormous territorial empires also created enormous financial obligations. And this is where the story becomes particularly interesting. While Spain possessed vast territories and enormous quantities of American silver, commercial and financial power was increasingly developing elsewhere. Antwerp became a major European commercial center before war and political upheaval contributed to the rise of Amsterdam. The Dutch Republic demonstrated a new model of power, relatively small territory combined with extraordinary maritime commerce, shipping, financial innovation, and global trading networks. Amsterdam became one of the world's great financial centers. Then Britain emerged. British naval power, industrialization, colonial expansion, and financial institutions eventually produced a global system centered on London. The British Empire inherited and expanded many of the commercial techniques developed by earlier maritime powers while adding something revolutionary, industrial production. And eventually, the center of gravity crossed the Atlantic. The United States combined enormous territory, natural resources, industrial capacity, financial markets, technological innovation, and increasingly dominant naval power. New York became a global financial center while Washington became the political center of a country whose influence extended across the world. Seen this way, History is not simply a story of empires rising and falling. It is a story of inheritance. Rome left institutions to Constantinople. Constantinople interacted with the Islamic world. Mediterranean commerce helped produce the Italian city-states. Iberian empires opened the Atlantic world. Dutch merchants pioneered new forms of global finance. Britain combined finance, naval power, and industrialization. America ultimately combined many of these inherited systems on a continental scale. The intriguing question is therefore not simply, who replaced Rome? It is, what makes one civilization capable of inheriting the functions of another, and what causes the center of economic and geopolitical gravity to move again? Perhaps the history of Europe is best understood not as a series of disconnected civilizations, but as a continuous struggle to inherit, transform, and redirect the power of the civilizations that came before.